Our next speaker is also what I would call a hybrid, Dr. Wong Chin Huat from the Penang Institute, a think tank. I'm not sure whether he's an active politician. I don't think he's an active politician, but he's a think tanker and the person who comes out with ideas. And I now invite him to give his commentary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Malaysia would be a new country if Dr. Farouk Musa could be invited, not by a church, but by pass to his Muktamar. Now, I wouldn't even think of UMNO. Allow me to call a spade as a political scientist. My first point is that the context of this entire debate about Islamic State and Hudud law and so on is a zero-sum game of communal competition with a religious packaging, notwithstanding the global factors. It's a currency. Religion is a currency to define us and others. If you look back at the Sedition Act, which was amended after 1969, the ethnic riot, Islam was not even a sensitive issue then. The sensitive issue then, the currency to define the ethnic divide, was language. But today, language is no longer an issue, and religion has taken its place. And when you talk about Islamic State, this has become the be-all and end-all in how do you expand the role of Islam and Muslim vis-a-vis other faiths and other religious community. And that's a challenge. Because to say no to Islamic State for a Muslim as if you're negating the expansion of the role of Islam for this country, which made Farouk, such a brave public intellectual because he's speaking up in a very unpopular way to many. To me, religious competition is inevitable. That's my second point. I admire my friends in past, Dr. Mujahid, Dr. Zulkifli Ahmad, Khalid Samad, and so on, for trying to push a party to take on a line and say, okay, we want to move away and want to be much more universal and so on. But to many of their grassroots, the difficult question is that if you don't talk about Islam, then what is past for? It's a fundamental question of then how are we different from UMNO? And unless you deal with that, you can't actually take the issue out. So I think we really need to go back and accept the fact that say, you have to deal with this religious competition. You can't do that away. It will remain with us for quite some time. It's a question of then, just which direction. Now, my third point is, you have to rethink about the role of religion in this competition. Let us consider the fact that all religions would prioritize, would privilege their believers. That's what we call selective incentive. Otherwise, why do you believe in your faith, right? The believers must be treated better than the non-believers, at least in the afterlife. Now, given the fact of that, then it's nothing great if a religion can actually show to you and say that, we better privilege our believers than others. That's just the business. I think for a religion to be great is how does the religion treat the non-believers? To me, that should be the battlefield for the competition. How far can you actually treat the non-believers? I'm a non-Christian, a non-believer of Christianity. I benefit from the existing secular state model, which is an outcome of years, centuries of wars, reflections, and reform of Christianity. Now, to what extent that today we can actually have the religious competition for the Muslim in a way that it would actually try to outdo what it can offer for non-believers. I think that should be the question that can take us out from this this debate. To me, the most successful project of Islamization in this country is Islamic banking. It doesn't impose on anyone, but the figure shows that the biggest community of depositors in Islamic bankings are the non-Muslim Chinese. It was not imposed on them. So why did the Chinese, rush to Islamic banking? Very simple reason, it's good. I think that's actually where Islamization should go back to. As I say, every religion provide the best for your believers. It's a question now, how can you offer the best for non-believers? And I think if Islam can do that, I have no problem with an Islamic state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wong Chin Huat. The perspective of Malaysian political scientists, the competition in the field, the rights of the non-believers, and so on. Our next commentator on the panel of speakers or faculty of speakers is the only participant from East Malaysia, from the state of Sarawak, a very distinguished lawyer, Yang Berhormat Barubian. May I now call upon him to give his commentary.
Thank you, Dr. Cyrus, Dr. Farouk, for the article and sharing this morning. I think I should be given extra 5 minutes, coming all the way from Kuching. Second, I'm a politician and a lawyer, so again, 5 minutes. I think we need to be very focused. We're talking about this debate in the context of Malaysia and in the context of the Malaysian Federal Constitution. I don't need to go into history. I think it had been defined, it had been interpreted. We know of statement made by previous prime ministers of this nation, decided in a Supreme Court was the Omar bin Cik So and the Supreme Court. I think that's already decided upon. But I like Dr. Farouk article. I think it is very clear to me. It resonates to our minds, the non-Muslim, as he gets us through his article. And I quote from his article that came out on August 2nd, arguing for a secular state, Malaysia. Secularism does not mean the exclusion of religion from the public life of society. And he goes on, calling for a state to be secular is not similar in any ways to the call of secularizing the society. A state should be secular in the sense that it is neutral to all the differing religious doctrines. And goes on, a secular state must embrace democracy, and democracy cannot be based on Sharia law, as that on the contrary would denote a theocracy. So based on that understanding, as we debate this in particular in relation to Malaysia, therefore I agree with Malik Imtaj. Yeah, Article 4 solved the problem. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, not Sharia and not the Quran. Now get back into the context of East Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak. As by way of emphasis, I know the 5 minutes is very short. Now, the court, previous prime ministers confirmed that Malaysia is a secular state. So when Sabah and Sarawak formed Malaysia in 1963, it's so clear for us, we were looking for a secular state. You look at the Kobol Commission, the Reid report, all over the pages, when they met non-Muslim in Sabah and Sarawak, they all, in fact, they were very worried on Article 3. Okay? But look at this. And the report came up by the Kobol report, paragraph 148. I brought this because I don't want to quote from DA. Yeah? And on religion, this is what the views of the chairman and British members on this religion. There remained a provision in the existing federal constitution of Malaya that Islam is national religion and that certain public expenditure may be incurred for Islamic purposes. All Muslim communities should welcome the provision that Islam should be the national religion of the Federation, but even with guarantees of freedom and religion for the Borno states, we have met with strong resistance from many non-Muslim communities to the idea that this federal provision should apply to the Borneo territories. We consider that this is a matter for the people of the Borneo territories, which have a non-Muslim majority, to decide for themselves at a later stage when fully elected representative bodies have been constituted. We recommend, therefore, that the federal provision should not be extended to the Borneo territories in the meantime. The views of the Malayan members, and this is important. We think that all Muslim community would welcome a provision that Islam should be the national religion of the Federation. Amongst the non-Muslim who appeared before us, there was a substantial number who would not object to the present practice in the Federation of Malaya, as they are satisfied with the provision for fundamental liberties and freedom of religion in the Malayan Constitution. There were, however, a number of non-Muslim who were most anxious that there should be no national religion for the Federation. A great many of them, however, would be prepared to consider that Islam might be made the national religion, provided that it should not be the religion of their particular state. Then they concluded with this paragraph. Taking these points fully into consideration, we are agreed that Islam should be the national religion for the Federation. We are satisfied that the proposal in no way jeopardizes freedom of religion in the Federation, which in effect would be secular. That I conclude. I think it's very clear interpretation and understanding when we formed Malaysia in '63 that we expect that Malaysia would be a secular state, not Islamic state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yang Muhammad Barubian, for that perspective from East Malaysia. You'll see a person running right up to the stage. He has got to make a housekeeping announcement before we open the discussion to the floor.